Hello everybody and welcome to That's Football. Antonio Conte has basically quit Spurs, hasn't he, with his outburst after the 3-3 draw with Southampton yesterday. Where do you stand on this? He's been in many quarters, and no surprise here because he is a foreign coach and the British journalists and ex-players will jump on him because they love to do that. But where do you sit on this? Because I'm going to say from the start, I think he's absolutely spot on. I'm not a fan of the football that Spurs have played, but when you look at some of the things that Conte has come out with, 20 years there is the owner and they've never won something, but why? The fault is only for the club or for every manager that stays here. I mean, that is unbelievable. And he says, look, you risk to disrupt the figure of the manager and to protect the other situation in every moment. Until now, I tried to hide the situation, but now no, because I repeat, I don't want to see what I've seen today because this is unacceptable. And it's also unacceptable for the fans. They follow us, pay for their ticket, and to see the team another time have this type of performance is unacceptable. We have to think about this a lot. But that's absolutely damning, isn't it? When you say that 20 years this club has been like this, basically without trophies, they've never won anything. Why is that? The fault is only for the club or for every manager that stays here. He's clearly had enough, and he's clearly had enough of the press blaming him instead of blaming the real issues. He described the players as selfish. He says, I see selfish players. I see players that don't want to help each other and don't put their heart in. They're used to it here. They're used to it. They don't play for something important. Yeah, they don't want to play under pressure. They don't want to play under stress. It is easy in this way. Tottenham's story is this. I mean, look, that's a resignation letter. Whatever anybody thinks, that's a resignation letter. That is a guy that's had enough. Basically calling his players bottlers, basically saying that this club, Spurs, don't win anything because of their owners. Can we just remember that the words we describe Spurs as? Bottlers, very Spursy. I mean, the manager, I've got to say, I think he's spot on. And I don't know what everyone else is going to think. And I look forward to the comments. I really do. Because Man United, under Solskjaer especially, terrible owners, dividends, debt, no ambition. And all we ever wanted was a manager to do what Conte's done there. To come out and say, look, I'm trying my best. Whether I'm up to the job or not, this club's being run into the ground by people above. The players are toxic. They're not good enough. They're on stupid wages. They're constantly backstabbing each other. I mean, it all came to a head with Ranić, and he sort of did let that out, didn't he? And he paid the price. And Conte will pay the price. He has to. He's undermined his playing squad. He's undermined the club. But ultimately, I think he's speaking as a fan, and I'm not saying he is a Spurs fan. Obviously, he's protecting himself. But, you've got people like Carragher and Neville going on about it, and Gary Neville was saying this is why I said he wasn't a Man United manager. I mean, what has that got to do with not being a Manchester United manager? Somebody who comes out and speaks honestly. He's a frustrated... I mean, look, the motivation here is Conte protecting himself. Like, he's basically saying, look, I can't succeed at this football club because these players and this club's mentality is just to be losers. It's ingrained in them, and they will not allow me to build a team to win a trophy because they haven't done that for 20 years and they're not going to do it now, and I've had enough of it. It's unacceptable. I can't win here. Now, Conte's won at Chelsea, he's won at Inter, he's a proven winner at a club he never should have gone to, because Spurs are not proven winners. Whether it's Mourinho, whether it's Pochettino, whether it's Harry Redknapp, they don't win. Whatever you think about those coaches, they don't win at Spurs because you can't win at Spurs. They are perennial bottlers, and they're Spursy. That's the way it is. So I think criticism of Conte is really interesting because ultimately he's frustrated, and he's if he wasn't motivated, there's probably managers out there, Pochettino, who were quite happy to just get fourth every year and put up with it. And I'm not saying Pochettino was totally happy with it, but Pochettino's not a serial winner. Mourinho is, Conte is. Both those managers have called Spurs out for what it is. It's unable to win because it doesn't have that mentality through the club. Spurs have got an amazing stadium. I think Spurs need an ownership like a Man City or a Newcastle, and they would suddenly become like a Manchester City. I mean, Spurs are equipped to be a very, very successful football club. They just run very, very, very badly if you want to win trophies. And I think Conte's calling that out. The football's boring. There's no doubt about that. The football's boring. But on the other hand, he came into that Spurs team who were crap. What was it, like November last season or October last season? He got you top four. this season, very crap, boring team, you're probably going to get top four again. I mean, I don't know how Conte's managed to do that with all the problems that are clearly there at Spurs. There's huge issues. I don't really understand the signings that don't get picked. Did he make those signings? Are those the signings that he wants? But you know what? I think Conte's absolutely spot on. He's basically done a public resignation. He's basically said, I've had enough. I think there's big stories in there. And I think the biggest one for me was the fact that he said, look, I say what's going on, and it's always the manager that gets thrown under the bus, whilst everybody else gets ignored. And I think that is a fair point. I don't know why this happens in the British media, but I would observe that the criticism at Spurs over this season has always been at Conte. It's never at certain players, and it's certainly hardly ever at their board. And I don't know why that is. At least at Man United, we're very vocal at making it about the Glazers. At Spurs, it's never about their owners. Oh, they're all right, they're all right. And maybe they are all right if you don't want to win trophies. I mean, I'm not saying that the Spurs ownership model is terrible, but in modern football, it's only going one way. You either spend big money or you do nothing. Now, if the Spurs owners care about that football club, they should be looking to sell. Because if they really care, they are not capable of making that club win trophies. And that is what Conte is saying. The 20 years is evidence that you can't win trophies. And football's changed. 10 years ago, Spurs had more chance of winning trophies than they do now. Not now. The way football's going, look at Newcastle. You've already got Man City. Man United's up for sale. Liverpool were looking for investments. Where are Spurs winning a trophy? There's only 3 trophies you can win. You're never going to win in Europe. So it's just going to go on and on and on and on. And I think that is a resignation letter from Conte. There is absolutely no doubt that there will have to be ramifications from that. Where you go from here, I wouldn't be surprised if they have to terminate his contract. He'll get the payout and he'll walk into another job somewhere in Europe because he's a good coach. And who's the loser? Spurs. Spurs lose out on this. I mean, let's not pretend that we'll probably hear it on the radio and we'll see it on the TV and we'll see it on Twitter. Experts going, you can't do that, get rid of him. I woke up this morning, I'm sorry, I think people like Gary Neville have just got an axe to grind with Conte. They're so locked up on being right. Oh, I said he shouldn't have gone to Man United and now I've been proved right. Well, he got top 4 last year with Spurs, Man United didn't. He could get top 4 this year if he's allowed to finish the season. And at the end of the day, you're telling me I wouldn't have took Conte when Solskjaer got sacked? I wanted Brandon Rodgers. That season last year was a joke. Conte probably would have got us top 4 from that position. We got less than 60 points. Of course, we're right to get Ten Hag, but let's not pretend that Manchester United sat there when they sacked Solskjaer and said, we'll get Ten Hag in the summer and just write the season off. That's not what happened. They were looking for different options. They were looking at Rangnick being part of the rebuild and then they sacked him. So, look, I would have took Conte, 100%. We're all geniuses in hindsight, but I would have took him. That's by the by. The reality is, we're talking about Spurs. We're talking about the situation at Spurs. Let's not try and manipulate it into a story about Man United or what you think of Conte. Conte's record stands up for himself. He's a very good manager. Whether you like his style of football, he's a very good manager. All he's done for me is call out Spurs for what it is. I'm stunned by the criticism. I don't know what Spurs fans think, but he's basically protecting you. He's basically come out and said, you're the ones who are watching that rubbish. You're the ones who are paying to watch this rubbish. He's basically saying some of the players aren't up for it. They're selfish and that they don't like the pressure. And the ownership is not good enough. You shouldn't do it as a manager. You really shouldn't. I would say that. But there comes a point where I think Conte's just had enough. I don't think a manager should do that, but I think he's done it because he's had enough. And all he's done is expose what we can see. Some of those players at Spurs don't have the mentality. And the ownership doesn't have the ambition. So as a manager that does, all you've got with Conte, as I say, is a frustrated winner. He's doing that because he wants to compete with Ten Hag. He wants to compete with Arteta. He wants to compete with Pep. But he can't because he's not able to do it either way. And people will say, well, he picks those players. But he picks those players because he can't get the players that he wants. He probably wants about 5 or 6, 7, 8 more players. And he knows he's not going to get them. And Conte's going in the summer anyway. He's going in the summer. I think his frustration yesterday was that they were 3-1 up against Southampton. They should have got another 2 points, which would have put them into 3rd place. and they're overachieving. If I'm honest, I think they are overachieving. And then they've dropped 2 points because the players he can't rely on. So I think frustration bubbles over, and then he knows he's going to get the blame for it, when ultimately he's trying to say that the real problem that this club has been there for 20 years. Anyway, look, smash a like on the video, make sure you subscribe, get your comments in below. Interested to see what you think, but it'll be interesting to see what Spurs do, because they will be the loser. And I tell you what, if you think about bringing Poch back, get used to fighting for 6th for the next 5 years, because he ain't the answer in my opinion. Thanks everyone for watching. Speak to you in a bit.